is the guy who writes it already in 1920. 1,000-year plan that will save the world. Kill the Jews, to rid the world of the Jews, and then finally to get rid of the Slavs. And so the ghetto themselves is a way of getting them together to get towards the final solution. So if you left here and went to Treblinka, your life expectancy was 4.5 hours. That's it. 4.5 hours, sometimes it took longer, but 4.5 hours you were dead. The Nazi numbers in their document that they wrote says all 590,000 Jews of Warsaw need to go into the ghetto. Now, look at the map. You can see there are many, many roads around the ghetto itself. We are over 1/3 of Warsaw's population at the time of the ghetto, and we are put into 2.8% of the city. Try to picture 1/3 of the largest city's population moving through the streets in an endless stream, pushing, wheeling, dragging all their belongings from every part of the city to one small section, crowding one another more and more as they converged. No cars, no horses, no help of any sort were available to us by order of the occupying authorities. Pushcarts were about only our method of conveyance that we had, and these were piled high with household goods, furnishing much amusement to the German onlookers, who delighted in overturning the carts and seeing us scrambling for our effects. Many of the goods were confiscated without explanation. In the ghetto, there was appalling chaos. Thousands of people were rushing around at the last minute trying to find a place to stay. Everything was set up, but still they kept coming, and somewhere, and somehow, for more room was found. The narrow, crooked streets of the most dilapidated section of Warsaw was crowded with pushcarts, their owners going from house to house, asking the inevitable question, have you any rooms? The sidewalks were covered with their belongings. Children wandered, lost and crying. Parents ran here and there seeking them. Their cries drowned out in the tremendous hubbub of 500,000 people, uprooted people. People didn't know about Treblinka. That's what we asked. How come those houses that were outside were here? Well, they thought that, look behind you. We can't even see the bus anymore. Don't hear anything. Can't see anything around us. It's all these fir trees, which, if they could speak, would tell us so many secrets. These carriages arrived to this area over here. Franciszek Zabecki writes for us as follows. There were days where 2 or 3 trains stood at Treblinka station outside, the station that we didn't get to stop at, with their unfortunate cargo, waiting their turn to be sent to the death camp. The transport sometimes waited all night, but transfer to the camp was not carried out in the darkness. The cruelty of the security guards, the Germans, the Latvians, and the Ukrainians is difficult to describe. Sadism and torture seemed to know no bounds. I saw how guards who were always drunk would open the freight car doors at night and demand money and valuables. Then they would close the doors, and they would fire into the cars. During the day, the bodies remaining at the station were collected, loaded onto a car, and sent to the death camp. This task was attended to by a group of Jews from the camp under SS and Ukrainian supervision. The train moved slowly through a strange and sad countryside. A moment later, it came to a stop. The door would open noisily. The emptiness and the sadness of the sandy countryside disappeared. Within seconds, a strange fear seized us all. Get out, came the familiar shouts. People began to push. We held one another's hand and jumped down into the sand. Everyone went towards the wall of crowded pine trees. Suddenly, I had a thought. These trees aren't growing. They're all dead.
To the room of the shoes, and I completely fell apart. There's something about seeing it that is so real, because there are literally, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of shoes there. I'll tell you my first reaction after I walked in and I just broke down. I said, my first feeling, and I almost regret that I didn't do it, I wanted to just take off my shoes and toss them in there.
There was a man who came once after the war to his Rebbe, or to the Rav, and he told him
tremendous, tremendous emotion that he wanted to donate a Sefer Torah. And the Rav asked him, what was it? Why was he so emotional about the Sefer Torah? So he told him that he was a Holocaust survivor. And one day he woke up, and it's hard for you to understand this, because we're here on such a nice day. Last time we were here, it's a different experience. It's covered in snow. It's freezing cold. You're bundled up with the finest coats, the biggest coats, extra sweaters and gloves. And you're still freezing. You didn't have shoes in the Holocaust, Tzvi told us. You died. So this guy lost his pair of shoes. And finally he was able to get another pair, however we got them. And he's about to put them on, and suddenly he notices that the insides of the shoes are made of a cloth of a Sefer Torah. And he gives out a yell. How can I walk? How can I walk and step on the word of Hashem every single step that I take? But finally he makes the cheshbon, the chai b'hem. He remembers that it's not one of the mitzvahs of Yehareg v'Ayav, and he puts on the shoes. And all throughout the war he said every step I took was like a knife through my heart. So now I swore to myself that when I got out of this, I would donate a Sefer Torah. Rabbi Isai, mi ka'amcha Yisrael. That a guy is sitting in the Holocaust. He doesn't know if he's going to live or if he's going to die. He doesn't have enough food. He's about to starve to death, and he's feeling guilty about wearing a pair of shoes that's lined with a piece of cloth from the Sefer Torah.
My grandfather was very historically minded, I think. I asked him recently, his 80th birthday, I said, you're so mindful of the Holocaust, and you see around what's going on. It was in the time, Iran was just denying actively. Aren't you concerned there's soon going to be no more survivors? There'll be no one to testify what happened. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He didn't understand the question. And I looked at him and I said, there's gonna be no more survivors. No one to tell the story. You know the story. You were there. Your family was there. But it's all over. Doesn't it concern you? And he shook his head. He said, it's not true. He said, we're all survivors. He said, if Hitler had his way, none of us here, none of us would have been here.
This is the place. This is the time of MS. This is the last time, maybe. Shari Demos, learning Alu. To Mamish, open your heart in this place.
There are people there's a survivor in Israel who lives today with the memory of the fact that her child was snatched from her on the ramp that we're standing in right now. As a prisoner came, took the baby out of her hands, snatched it out of her hands and gave it to an older woman behind. And when she tried to take it back, he slapped her one. He says, you're carrying on. She screamed and screamed and screamed. This old woman held the baby. She went to life. The old woman with the baby went to death. If she would have had the baby, they would have sent them both. Just the dilemmas that are going through people's minds on this ramp, we can never even think about, we can never even deal with. As we said before, Überleben, the will to survive.
I just walked out of this building here in Auschwitz, and they said on a good day, 24,000 people were murdered. That was a day that was productive. We're losing thousands of people every day to the Jewish people. Just disappearing. all of our families are being affected.
It would be able to fit in 2,000 people at any one time. Good production day in Auschwitz, 24,000 people. Within 35 minutes, everybody was dead, and people could go into the gas chamber to be able to clear it out. Towards the end of the war, the Sonderkommander of Crematorium Number 3 decided to take upon themselves a daring escapade and attempt to blow up one of the crematoria. So this is what happened. The dynamite came into the camp and was located in the women's camp, which is where the barracks, the stone barracks, are. 7 women decided that there was only one way to smuggle the dynamite into the crematoria. They would take a stick of dynamite and make sure that they were then selected for death that day. The Sonderkommander could then retrieve the dynamite when they went into the gas chambers to remove the dead bodies. And this is exactly what they did. They got told who the 7 women were, what they looked like, what their number was on the arm, and they went to find them after the gassing of them. As the bodies were pulled out of the gas chamber, 2 unbelievable things happened. 2 of the women, sisters, had not totally succumbed to the gas, and miraculously, they survived. Number 2, the dynamite was intact. The Sonderkommander placed the sticks and set up the explosion which destroyed the building beyond repair. Just unbelievable Mesiras Nefesh which is going on here. But these women are prepared to, hopefully if they can save 1 Jew, 2 Jews, 5 Jews, just by blowing up the gas, it was worth it for them, from their perspective. It's unbelievable. In 1942, the world knew about this place. They've got pictures about this place from 1942. There's a man called Jan Karski who fled from Poland, who told the world about what was going on, and that was in 1942. FDR Roosevelt, who decided not to allow the Jews who were fleeing to come into America at the time. And other people like him, and the Evian Conference, where Canada is quoted as saying, "None is too many." And Australia quoted as saying, "We do not have a refugee problem, and we're certainly not desirous of having one." And the British who said, "We're not going to accept not one more Jew." The world was silent. That's all they did. They weren't responsible. That's all they did.